Radio. Now it's 11:15 now on the 23rd of March. It's been a year since the first lockdown came into force. I think the longest and shortest year of my life, definitely the craziest one, that's for sure. And at 12 o'clock, we will be doing a minute's silence to honour all of the people who have sadly lost their lives during this pandemic. But this first hour, second hour, can't count today. For this second hour, we were joined by a very, very special guest, a student nurse, Abigail Turner, to talk about her experience during the pandemic. Hello, Abigail.
Hi,
How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, I'm not too bad, thank you. So, why don't you give all of our listeners a little bit of an introduction to yourself, who you are, what you do, why you're here today?
So, my name's Abigail. I'm a final year student children's nurse at the University of Southampton. And yeah,
Absolutely fantastic. So, you're from the West Midlands, aren't you? From Herefordshire, which I'm
yes.
sure some of our Black Country viewers will say, hmm, West Midlands, but in my mind, it's definitely in the West Midlands. So, like so many people, your life was turned upside down really by the pandemic a year ago today. But as a student nurse, I can imagine that happened in quite a different way. So, what happened to your course when all
So,
of this started?
it was very different to the rest of my friends who don't do nursing. We were on placement when kind of COVID was coming into the UK. Um, we were still on placement at this time last year. And when the announcement came out, we were pulled out of placement and it was supposed to be our final week. Um, we were then out of placement for quite some time and our kind of theory modules were moved around so that we kind of weren't being put at risk. And third year student nurses at the time were then asked to step up. And then so were second year nurses. But being a child nurse, we weren't as in demand, but quite a few of us still did get put out onto paid placement that the NHS staff were having to do.
I can imagine that must have been so daunting as a student. I mean, obviously you've gone into this degree knowing that that's what you want to do as a career,
Yeah,
but to be thrown into the deep end, what was that like emotionally? Was it different to how you expected your placements to be?
definitely. It was a whole nother world. So although I do children's nursing, at sort of like meal times, lunchtime and dinner times, we used to go up to the COVID wards and we'd help those who were really unwell to kind of have their lunch, have their dinner, and just have somebody to sit with and chat to. And it it really just was so different. Like nothing I've ever seen before.
And you said the third years had to step up. Do you know any student nurses that did actually have to go into, the sort of frontline situation, or were you guys kept
Yeah,
away from that?
I know quite a few that go to my university as well that went straight into places like ED, and some of them went to critical care. And they, I think they struggled a lot more than I did, being somewhere where we didn't really see COVID as much. Um, I think it's a lot for the third years last year to have had to go out there and not only do this placement, but then go straight into working. They've not really had time off.
Yeah, I mean, the rest of us can only really imagine how much of a sort of emotional shock that really was. And a lot of people as well, because I don't know what your situation is, being at university, have been away from their family, because I can imagine going into these wards, you'd be quite nervous about bringing the virus back home. Did you experience that? Were you away from your family?
Yeah, so when I came back to do my paid placement, I was the only one in my student house, and I left my family, stayed here, did my placement, and then once I finished, I had to isolate before I could go back to them, because it wasn't something I was willing to put them at risk for doing. Um, and then since coming back to university for my final year, we were on placement all over Christmas and coming into February. But I'm really lucky that Southampton have developed sort of like a testing program for their students, so we're able to test and make sure everything's okay, so we could go home for Christmas.
I'm really glad that you could go home for Christmas because, as I said, like it's just been such a crazy year. And I'm sure everybody listening will agree that the NHS staff, student nurses, student paramedics, all of this sort of student staff have really been the backbone of this pandemic. But I can imagine for you as well. I mean, you go into your degree to learn, you go in your degree to learn lessons and become
Yeah,
a nurse. What was the biggest lesson you learned this year?
Oh.
Sorry, that was a very difficult question. I know, just kind of dropped
No,
that one on
I
you.
think that, do you know what? The biggest lesson I probably learned was it is okay to be upset and to kind of not be okay when you're seeing these things happen and hearing kind of everything going around. And it's okay to, get upset and take 5 minutes away and think, do you know what? Yeah, this is a tough time, but that's okay.
That is such an important message to send out to everybody, really, and that's something that we really want to sort of get across here on Black Country Radio, which is why we've been getting people to shout out the people that have been there for them when they've not been okay during this last year. I'm curious now that we're hopefully, fingers crossed, coming to the light at the end of the tunnel, and hopefully things will start to go back to normal. Normal NHS services will be able to resume. How will it alter the rest of your course? Are you going to go back to in-person teaching going forward?
So we start a new module after kind of the Easter holidays, and there's been talks that for some of our seminars and things, because we are a small group, and we kind of we have had university bubbles because we have to do skills and learn all these different things in labs on campus, that we hopefully will get to go in and have a few things be on campus, which will be lovely.
Yeah, I really hope that you can. I hope for all university students, but especially student nurses and paramedics that have really just had to you've just had to completely change your life over the last year.
Yeah.
And there's been plenty of praise for the NHS, of course, from all sides. But do you feel at any point that the contribution of people like you, of student nurses, has been somewhat overlooked in the media and just in general?
And as much as I don't want to say it, but yes, I think, yeah, it was an announcement was made that we were going to help, but there was never anything more about student nurses kind of stepping up and doing this. And I think in a lot of places they made such a big difference and helped so much that I do think there could have been some more recognition for student nurses, definitely.
And I'm not entirely sure how this works. So perhaps you could shed some light on this for us. I'm aware that some placements were paid and others were not. How has that worked? Because I can imagine as well, it's been incredibly difficult supporting yourself financially throughout all of this.
Yeah, so third years had priority first to go out and to go into this paid placement. Um, and then second years were given the option. And I think in our child nursing cohort in my year, I think only 4 or 5 of us managed to go out onto paid placements. Others had to go out on unpaid placements because the funding got scrapped and
Right.
it
And
was no
so,
longer normal placement.
okay. So, what is the situation now? Did they bring the funding back with the second wave when that kind of emerged? Did they need more student nurses to come back into the workplace? Oh, right.
No,
So,
so because we were already on placement, we were already on a normal placement, so they didn't feel the need that for us to be paid.
oh, okay, I see. And how is it also impact? Because people forget, I think, as well, that not only are you on these placements, but you also have to get your degree. You also have to do the exams, the modules, and things like that. So, how has it impacted the kind of
Yeah.
academic side?
So our academic side really hasn't changed much at all. We have still been doing our exams just from home, and they've kind of been more open book exams. And we had to do, while we were on our placement, we did a group presentation, and it's something we all had to record over Microsoft Teams and still submit it and find a way to fit it in around all of our placements so that we could record it.
I mean, of course, it's been incredibly difficult for you the last year, but have there been any good things to come out of this experience? Have you figured out perhaps what sort of nursing route you really want to go down? Has it opened your eyes to anything that you didn't see beforehand?
Um, it's definitely opened my eyes to how much one thing can change everyone's lives. Um, I want to say the one positive thing that I definitely really took away from it was how lovely the staff are, like, to be around during a time. So they're willing to be there and do anything to help anyone, even us student nurses when we were there.
Yeah, I think it really has fostered an incredible sense of community spirit, even amongst the NHS staff. So I suppose my question for you now would be, so you've talked about what's happening after these holidays. How much longer do you have left of your degree? And what's kind of next for you after that?
So we are writing our dissertations at the moment, and then we have one more final module, and then we go on to our our big sign-off placement that's 12 weeks long. It finishes in August, and once we're finished, we make sure everything's signed off. We've completed all our skills and everything, and then from September we start working as a nurse.
Wow, that is absolutely incredible. And I'm sure there are actually probably quite a few people listening that are considering a career in nursing. I'm not sure whether the last 12 months has more put people off or encouraged people, but what would your message be to any budding student nurses out there? Should they go for it still?
100%. I think if you've got some sort of inkling or some feeling that it might be what you want to go into, 100% go for it. The support is there from university. The variations between doing your theory work and your practical work is lovely. It's kind of like a step away from your theory work, and you get to still go and help people and have a lovely time. I'd really encourage any.
We lost you slightly at the end there, but I think you did say that you would really encourage anybody to get involved. But listen, Abigail, thank you so much for spending 10 minutes with me chatting about that. I really do appreciate it. And I'm sure that everybody at Black Country Radio and in the Black Country will be grateful for the service that you've done. And yeah, continue working hard, and congratulations for all the achievements that you've made over the last 12 months.
Thank you so much.
Now, guys, don't go anywhere, because we've still got some great music on the way for the rest of the hour. And we'll also be doing a 1-minute silence at 12 o'clock to mark all of the victims that have sadly lost their lives during the COVID-19 pandemic. But first up, here's a short break on Black Country Radio.
Black Country Radio.